Good morning, students. I still see morning. I still see 14 students. Was there some class before this also?
Yes, sir. Padhyay sir's class.
Okay. Fine. Okay, so in the meanwhile, students join, we can just quickly revise last lecture. So last lecture was about basically the virus transmission in plants. We discussed in detail about the virus transmission methods in plants. So, can anyone tell me why virus transmission is important? What is the use of virus transmission? Or let's start with like, what is transmission? Yes, Manaswani, can you tell me what is transmission and then why it is important?
Okay, ma'am. So, transmission is basically, in the simplest terms, it's the movement of a virus from, let's say, either a vector from a host or from one host to another host. So, why is this important? Because, as we know, viruses need host cells to survive, right? So, because of that, if there was no transmission, then there would be no way for the future, the next generations of the virus to propagate, because after fully infecting one particular host, they would have to move on to another host to survive. So because of that, they need some form of transport or some kind of movement, which is why transmission plays a very important role. So it just plays a key role in their entire life cycle and in ensuring that the population continues to grow.
Yes, okay, good, Manaswani. So, yes, can anyone else tell me that what is horizontal transmission? What is horizontal transmission and what is vertical transmission? There are two basic types of transmission, right? So, what is horizontal transmission and what is vertical transmission? Yes, Shakti, please go on. Yes, Shakti, unmute yourself and you can say. Hmm. Shakti, please unmute yourself.
Am I audible?
Yeah, you're audible. Please switch on your camera also.
Yes, ma'am. Am I visible?
Uh, yes, Shakti. Probably you'll be visible soon. Your camera is on. So, yes. Yes, you are visible.
Yes, ma'am. So horizontal transmission is basically the transmission which occurs through vectors or
Mm-hmm.
some equipment that human use, and
Mm-hmm.
some tools or some direct or external contamination. And vertical transmission occurs through when plant get the disease transmitted from their parents,
Yes, right.
or
Yes,
maybe
Shakti.
through a sexual, or maybe from sexual ways.
Okay, fine. Fine, Shakti. Yes, so my next question is what is mechanical transmission? Can anyone tell me what is mechanical transmission? Yes, Devanshi, please go on.
Ma'am, am I visible?
Yes, Devanshi, you're visible. Good to
Ma'am,
see you.
mechanical transmission is when plants come in contact with the other plants.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Maybe also when they rub together, or it
Mm-hmm.
can be happen by the action of humans. Um, Also, it involves the um, uh, Mm, it also involves the introduction of infected viruses
Mm-hmm.
and other biological, we can say, virus that is living, suitable site in the living wants.
Okay, fine. Yes, mechanical transmission is through when if any plant is injured or wounded, maybe with the help of a vector or any other means, and they come in contact with each other, the virus will get transmitted. Or it is a good mean of transmission of viruses to the host plant. So mechanically, we can do it in a lab or a glass house. We can transmit viruses to the maintenance host or propagative host for further lab studies. This can be done. So next that we discussed was about we discussed about various ways of insect transmission, was also that how insect transmit viruses. So in that there were certain terms such as non-persistent viruses, persistent viruses, semi-persistent viruses. So non-persistent viruses were which are acquired by the vector, and while it feeds on the host, and it does not stay in the vector body for a longer time. It doesn't persist there for a longer time. Persistent viruses, as the name suggests, that means they stay in the that vector body for a longer time. They are acquired from vector after a after only vector when they feed on a plant for a very long time, right? So this is the difference. Semi-persistent means somewhere in between, like persistent and the semi-persistent. And then we discuss the circulative transmission, where there's a long period of acquisition of virus by a vector, and there's a latent period of several hours in such cases. We discussed about a lot of vectors. If they are active as a vectors, Mysis persicae is very common one. Then there are certain helper viruses also. For example, these are the viruses. There's one virus which is a dependent virus, another virus which is a helper virus. So two viruses are basically present, and then a vector particularly transmit the virus from one host to the other host. Whitefly is the commonest example, most common. These are found in abundant in the plants. These are found abundant in the warmer climates. These are found in abundant in the glass house or polyhouse conditions, and they transmit most of the bagmoviruses, which are very harmful for the plant, and a lot of losses are caused by them. Then thrips transmit, leaf hoppers transmit the viruses. Then there are certain group of nematodes, basically they transmit the viruses. Certain fungi also, they transmit the viruses. So in this way, basically we discuss number of vectors in the plant which transmit viruses. So usually without vector, the transmission is not possible. Yes, mechanical transmission if is there, or by human contact otherwise. In plant viruses, when we talk, so we always say that vectors, they play a very important role in the transmission and in the management also. When we first think of virus management in the plant, we think of vector management, right? So today's lecture is focusing on the human virus transmission, that how human viruses are transmitted. So like in plants, there are a number of methods. In humans also, there are a number of routes by which the viruses, or methods by which viruses, they get transmitted in the human. So first is a direct contact. So some viruses, they spread through direct contact with the person that has the virus. For example, HPV, human papilloma virus, can spread direct contact with the skin also. Then the Epstein-Barr virus can spread through saliva while kissing, right? So some viruses, they can spread through the direct contact. So such viruses can be avoided by avoiding such situations, right? Then bodily fluids, for example, HIV can pass from one person to another through exchange of a semen or a blood. So that's why they say that needles should be separate or discarded. Now, earlier time, what happened, what used to happen when we were kids. So they used to be glass syringes at that time. So they used to needle, they used to change, or sometimes I don't know if they were also sterilized. So glass syringes, they used to sterilize them after every use. So that was the way the syringes were used. But when the diseases like HIV and other these kind of diseases which were spreading through the blood transfusion or other method, they came into existence, and then the use of disposable syringes, they came into being. That okay, now they know that there are certain diseases which can be transmitted by this method, so how these can be prevented. So they came out with the technique that okay, let's avoid the reuse of these kind of syringes, let's go for a discarded syringes, like one time use. You use one time and it is being discarded. So best method to prevent such transmission. Contaminated food or water. For example, noroviruses are one type of virus that can enter the body when person consumes contaminated food or water and can cause diarrhea and other gastro problems. Insects, mosquitoes carry the virus that cause, for example, Zika virus from one person to another. There are a lot of mosquitoes, which mosquito or vector-borne diseases in humans, malaria, we can say that, we can say a dengue virus, right? So a lot of diseases are transmitted by vector. Then sometime during childbirth also, for example, if mother is suffering from a such cytomegalovirus condition, which is a herpes virus, it can pass the virus to an unborn child. So there are chances that viruses can be passed. So viruses can spread to touch, respiratory droplets, touch, for example, a person has SARS-CoV-2 virus on their hands and they touch their nose, mouth or eyes, virus can enter the body and they can develop COVID-19. Respiratory droplets, persons, they produce certain kind of a droplets when they sneezes and they cough, so viruses can be transmitted that way also. So touch, a less common method is when you touch surfaces that someone who has virus has coughed or sneezed on. So this is not very common that we'll touch surfaces, but yes, they are not visible. So unknowingly it can be done. So we may touch countertops or door knobs. That is the more common, like door, we have, someone has washed, clean their nose or whatever, there are some droplets on their hands and they're using those hands to open the door knobs, and similar, those knobs are used by us, so there are chances. And then there are still not chances, there are chances only when we touch those, touch our eyes, nose or mouth with those hands without cleaning. So then it is possibility. Virus can live on surfaces like plastic and stainless steel for 2-3 days. These are just the particles, so they can stay there, right, for some time. So this was the case in case of COVID also, that lot of emphasis was given on the clean practices, sanitization and washing the hands, because this is the way by which the virus was getting into our body. So we were trying to prevent its entry to our body by using these practices, right? Then factors determining the efficiency of viral transmission also include the size of the respiratory aerosol. So this is one factor. So larger particles, they tend to settle down more rapidly as compared to the smaller particles, and they present mostly risk to those close to the infected person. So larger particles, these are generated during the sneeze. When we sneeze, they travel less than 3 to 5 feet from an infected person and can transmit infection when the particle they land on the conjunctiva, our eyes, nasal mucosa, right, of a susceptible person. Then infection caused by viruses, they spread by large particle also, and they may be intermittent and occur without clustering of cases. So pathogens spread by large droplet include adenoviruses, influenza, rhinoviruses, etc. They can be spread by this method. Small particles which are less than 10 microns, they remain airborne for a longer period of a time as compared to the large aerosols. So these small particles can be inhaled by susceptible person in the same room, and then they are they are capable of more distant spread as they are carried by the air current, because they are smaller and they are there in the air also. Because viruses spread by small particle aerosols, they do not require a close contact. The source of infection may not be evident and more rapid outbreak can occur. So agents which are transmitted by small particle transmission include measles virus or varicella zoster virus, and there's a bacteria example, Mycobacterium tuberculosis. So we always say tuberculosis also contagious disease, communicable disease, and we can have it if we come in contact with the person. So viruses, they generally survive on hard surface than on a porous surface, and secretions containing influenza virus or respiratory syncytial virus are infectious on the countertop for less than 6 hours. So infectivity is usually lost after 30 minutes or less from RSV or influenza containing secretions on a gum. Rhinoviruses, flu viruses, adenoviruses are cold, sore throat, bronchitis, pneumonia, diarrhea. They are capable of surviving on a contaminated surface for more than 24 hours. So that's why it is, when we have even viral also, common cold also. So we usually get contaminate. We usually get infected with the person if our immunity is not that good. So we can, there are chances that we can get infected. So it is always emphasized that you cover your mouth while you sneeze, you cover your mouth while you cough, and mask has become a new norm. I guess if in a normal, we have a normal viral also, we should wear masks to avoid it spread to the other people. The difference in survivability is related to the presence or absence of a viral lipid envelope. Paramyxoviruses such as RSV, parainfluenza, and human metapneumovirus, as well as influenza virus, they have a lipid envelope, and that envelope is vulnerable to dehydration and rapid loss of infectivity. So they don't they lose their infectivity easily. Viruses that do not contain a lipid envelope, such as adenovirus, enterovirus, they survive for a longer period in an extracellular environment than viruses that contain a lipid envelope. One role of viral envelope is also to anchor the surface glycoprotein, and it enables the virus to attach to specific epithelial cells in the respiratory tract, which will support the viral replication. Then other routes of transmission are self-inoculation with contaminated secretion is the most common route of a respiratory virus transmission in a healthcare setting. This can involve direct contact with the infected person and a susceptible host. See, look, we are talking, when we talk about the infection, we use the term as a susceptible host, right? So why we are using these terms? Because the disease spread can only takes place if the host is susceptible, if the host is immune. That's why in some cases we see the few people, they show a lot of symptoms on an infection to a particular, even a common cold also, and few people, they don't show much symptoms. I mean, they'll have a cold, it will come and it will go very easily within a certain period of a time. So that difference is on the basis of the, this is like, few people are more susceptible and few people are more immune to a particular pathogens. Maybe जो immune है, they are already earlier affected by that particular viral disease, so they have developed some kind of immunity now. So second time when they'll get such infection, the effect will be milder, right? Then direct contact with infectious secretions is occur when there is a prolonged contact or setting with poor hygiene, such as homes or childcare centers. And in, see, have you heard of a hospital-borne diseases? Right, there are certain diseases which are hospital-borne and certain infections. So in the hospital settings also, there are a lot of chances that persons who are visiting there, since they are already immune system is weak, and there are chances they'll get a secondary infections or infections they'll acquire, they're more prone to the other infections, right? Bodily fluids, viruses that cause blood-borne diseases are carried in an infected person's bloodstreams, and other body fluids such as semen, vaginal secretions discharge from wounds and saliva. So sometimes the viruses may also be present in normal sterile body fluids such as amniotic fluids, also synovial, cerebrospinal fluids also. So there are chances that they could be present there. So people who carry these viruses may not show signs of an illness, but they can still infect others. So this is, they are asymptomatic. The virus is present there, but they are asymptomatic. They are not showing any sign, but there are chances that they can transmit these diseases to the other people. So for this reason, and because it is hard to know in an emergency situation what fluids are present, all blood and body fluids should be treated as a potentially infection. Hepatitis B virus, hepatitis C virus, and human immune deficiency viruses, they are transmitted by this means. Then food and water, numerous viruses of human and animal origin, they can spread in the environment, and they infect people by the water or maybe the food through ingestion, or very occasionally through skin contact. So these viruses, they are released into the environment by various routes, maybe the water runoff aerosols or maybe the other methods. And zoonotic viruses, they may infect human exposed to contaminated water surfaces also. Foodstuffs of animal origin can be contaminated, and their consumption may cause human infection if viruses are not inactivated during food processing. So there is chances at that stage also. For example, these kind of like gastro viruses, basically gastrointestinal infections, which are caused by human norovirus and hepatitis A virus, they come under this category. Then insects, through insects. So dengue is the most prevalent viral infection transmitted by Aedes mosquito. More than 3.9 billion people in 129 countries, they are at risk of having this dengue. So we all know every year in India also it's a seasonal disease. In the monsoons, when there are a lot of water collected in the different areas, so they are the good breeding grounds for the mosquitoes. And since mosquitoes are the vector of this virus, so at that cases there is always increase in the cases in the dengue viruses. So yes, they are there every year. Maybe few cases come, but not at the epidemic or larger levels, right? But still deaths are being reported. Other are chikungunya. Again, we know the viral disease basically, where again it's a fever and there are some spots all over the body, patches, red color patches are being found. Then Zika virus fever, yellow fever, West Nile fever, Japanese encephalitis, right? They all are transmitted by mosquitoes. Then we have a tick-borne encephalitis also, which is transmitted by ticks. Lyme disease, basically. So there are many diseases which are transmitted by the ticks and which are transmitted by the insects, which act as the vector. And so that's why proper sanitation and all those practices are being recommended for the prevention of such diseases. Many vector-borne diseases are preventable through protective measures and community mobilization. This, what does this statement means? This statement, because this is in our hand. These diseases can be easily managed if there is a good sanitation practices. If we don't allow water storage, the water is being replaced, or we put some. Always they say they put some oil in the coolers. We don't use, or we replace the waters in the coolers very frequently so that mosquitoes don't breed. So it totally depends upon us. If good practices are being followed, vector management can take place, so disease can also be managed. Similarly is the foodborne diseases or foodborne viruses. If we use clean water for drinking, water is being, if there are not any other source, if we just boil the water and then we use, so those can be prevented. And when we talk about Swachh Bharat Abhiyan or Clean India, right? So in that also many diseases are because people don't have a proper washrooms and people still go in an open, and those fecal matter, they contaminate the water sources also. For example, in the villages mostly this happen, right? There are water sources where the kettle and all other people also they use those water resources, and they wash their clothes also there. And all those factors basically they combinedly lead to the cholera and maybe other foodborne or these kind of diseases which are due to the bad sanitation practices. So that is why a government has led uh, a program where they gave this, they'll build a washrooms in the houses in the villages free of cost, so that to promote the health of the people, to promote and to tell people that this is important, and this may prevent the spread of many pathogens and many diseases further. So that's why it is very important, right? So that's all for the human viruses. So human virus transmission basically. So main emphasis is basically for the good sanitation, and the second one for the communicable viral diseases is wearing a mask, uh, proper social distancing, avoid crowding in the places where such disease outbreak has taken place. Social distancing norms are required to be followed, because when we talk about the, when epidemic is converted to a pandemic like situation, like epidemic is a situation when it is in a particular one country, the cases are there. When the viruses or pathogen they go and they spread out to the other part of the world, then it becomes a pandemic, right? So how we can manage that, how we can stop an epidemic to become a pandemic, by managing, by taking care of these small steps, that stop the movement, containment practices, quarantine practices, wear masks, wash your hands, social distancing, avoid social gathering, cancel all group meetings and group things. इसीलिए सबसे पहले they close the schools, they close the universities, because maximum crowding वहाँ पे होती है. So all these steps are basically for the prevention, to prevent the spread of the pathogen, so that less and less number of people are affected by particular disease, right? So I guess that's all from my side in today's lecture. If there's anything, please you can ask question. Okay, fine. So
Excuse me, ma'am.
yes, who's this?
Ma'am, Yuvraj.
Yuvraj. हाँ युवराज बताओ
Ma'am,
बेटा.
can you please state some ecological importance for the transmission of plant viruses?
Plant viruses.
Yeah, ma'am.
See, ecological importance. देखो युवराज, what Manaswini told was, like viruses, if they don't transmit themselves, then they are gone, they are lost. So they need to maintain themselves, right? They need to maintain their infection, so that for that they need to transmit. So ecological importance is they will be lost forever if they are not transmitted. सो वायरसेस तो बहुत पहले खत्म हो गए होते हैं, वो ट्रांसमिट ना होते, तो उसकी और कोई इकोलॉजिकल इंपॉर्टेंस आई कैन नॉट टेल कि दे आर इम्पोर्टेंस फॉर ह्यूमंस और प्लांट्स इन सर्टेन वे, नो, in that way, but they are important. Their transmission is important to keep themselves alive, to maintain their progeny, right? So that they can keep on multiplying. So that is their importance in that, right?
Yes, ma'am.
So basically it's see, we all multiply. We humans, they reproduce, they maintain their kind. Animals, they reproduce, they maintain their kind. Plants, they produce seeds, fruits and seeds to maintain their kind, right? So it's a basic nature. We keep on evolving and we keep on multiplying, so that we are there forever. So similar is case of the viruses also. At the end, the other, if they are not transmitted, they will not survive. If they will not survive, then we'll be virus free. Then we don't need to control the manage the viruses. So to maintain their kind, they need to transmit. Transmission is very important. Similarly is the case of a human virus transmission. If they are not transmitted, they are just there for, there are many diseases which are not transmitted. They are genetic diseases which are fine, but then they are transmitted in one or other way. For example, diabetes is a lifelong disease, but still they are being transmitted in a certain way, like mother to son, son to daughter. So yes, they are transmitted after a very long time, but they are still transmitted. Then there are other genetic diseases which are being transmitted, but the pathogens, diseases, they are being transmitted in one or the other way to maintain their kind, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Anything else? Anyone else? Please come up. No, fine. Okay, so that's all for today's lecture. I'll stop here because transmission topic is over. So tomorrow we'll take up another topic to cover, right? Please, all of you, please switch on your cameras for attendance. Yes, Adish Mishra,
Present, ma'am.
Athoiba,
Yeah, ma'am.
Ayushi, Sam.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes,
Present,
Sam.
ma'am. Present, ma'am.
Devanshi, Ishita,
Present, ma'am.
Janvi,
Present, ma'am.
Kshitij, Manaswani,
Present, ma'am.
Present, ma'am.
Namrita,
Present, ma'am.
Nehal,
Present, ma'am.
Rupal,
Present, ma'am.
Sahiba.
Excuse me.
Yes.
Present, ma'am.
I'm present. I was unable to unmute myself.
This is Ishita.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, Ishita. रूपल, साहिबा रूपल हो गया था. संजना,
Present, ma'am.
शक्ति,
Present, ma'am.
शिवानी, Shivani, are you there? Tanvi,
Present, ma'am.
Tridev,
Present, ma'am.
Vivek, Yukta,
Present, ma'am.
Present, ma'am.
Yuvraj.
Present, ma'am.
Fine.
Excuse me,
So,
ma'am. Ma'am,
who's this?
ma'am Shivani. Ma'am, I
Shivani,
am
please
also
switch on
present.
your
Actually,
camera.
yes, ma'am.
Okay,
Yes, ma'am.
Shivani.
Ma'am,
Fine.
did you get mine?
Yeah, I get yours, Vivek. Okay, okay, I'll see you tomorrow. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.